Hi, I'm Steve Smith, founder and producer at Beacus, an animation studio based in Lewes, East Sussex. We brought together some great industry people, broadcasters and creators to hear their thoughts on how animation can be a force for good and for peace.
Hi everyone, my name is Suzanne Kelly and I am the head of children's and young people's content here in RTE in Dublin in Ireland. So we will be a really active member within the EBU. We're kind of almost always kind of, collectively talking, whether it's online or in person. And we've got a very good kind of content sharing kind of executive setup at the moment. And we were contacted by RAI, by Luca and RAI, who really kindly, via the producers, offered the public service broadcasters the opportunity to show this film. As it is a kind of a verbal piece of work, there's no dialogue in it. It just was really appealing to us. So I viewed the film in the first instance. Now, obviously, it's not directly commenting, on the war in Ukraine or anything like that. It's set much further back than that. But it just really resonated with me. I think just the perspective from which it's shot at, just the realism with which kind of, I suppose, the horror of war is visualized on screen, and just that real wonderful POV from that little small child and how she navigates her way through it. But also, I suppose, what was really interesting about the film is that despite the horror of war, what it does give at the end is just this wonderful sense of kind of hope and the potential to rebuild. So it really was a kind of a no-brainer for us to take it. And we were so thrilled that we were offered the piece of content. So we put it on high rotation across our linear and player channels for the duration of the license. So it was a brilliant film and really well received. Yeah, I think what was really clever about the film, like obviously animation is an incredibly powerful tool to tell stories, particularly to a younger audience. Obviously it impacts hugely on an older audience as well. But for children, it's a language and a visual style that they're very familiar with. But what I thought was particularly clever about the film, in a way, is as she's moving through the film from the initial impact of the war on her and the separation, from her mum, but just that focus that they had on kind of that little ticket stub and how that kind of, in a way, shielded her in a little way, created this little bubble around her. So although, this horror is kind of unfolding around her, she was able to kind of, I suppose, just focus on the here and the now. Animation has this amazing ability to deliver, really difficult subjects in a way that children can kind of relate to and can process, and also I suppose is an amazing springboard for that kind of talkability and discussion that can potentially happen in the schoolyard, in schools. The world is quite a tumultuous place at the moment. There's conflicts, as you say, arising all over the world, and they are getting their news and their information from little snippets of news. So if we can tell stories that are based in reality, that give the facts, but kind of wrapped in a way that kids can understand, I think we should absolutely do that within the industry. We have quite an influx of Ukrainian people into Ireland, since everything has begun to unfold in the Ukraine. And what we're trying to do as well, I suppose, we're touching on, animation being so important in terms of helping children potentially deal with trauma and process it, but also what we're doing is we're licensing content from studios based in Kyiv, both in Ukrainian and kind of, again, non-verbal animation, but that Ukrainian children might be familiar, seeing on their traditional networks. And we're going to host it but this is purely, it's not necessarily a learning tool, or we're not trying to teach them anything. It's just purely for enjoyment and escapism. But the most recent thing that we've done from an RTE animation perspective, now it's not specifically on topic of war, but we did a brilliant series in 2018, which was called Her Story. And what Her Story was about was kind of, I suppose, telling the stories of trailblazing Irish women who heretofore had kind of almost been written out of Irish history. They weren't kind of, the big heavy hitters. And there was one particular story, and there was a woman called Mary Elms, or Eames, I think her actual surname is pronounced. And she was a Cork woman, a Trinity scholar. She was involved in the Spanish Civil War. She was also involved in World War II, kind of saving Jewish children from deportation. Now, these are kind of like anthologies of animation that we would do call outs for maybe once or twice a year. and this particular one was on the theme of her story. It's an incredibly powerful film. They're 2-minute little animated films, but again on heavy rotation throughout her schedule. Like, so I think, you know, little themed call outs can have huge power. They're short form content. But that was something I was quite proud of. And what was amazing about it was the call out went out to the industry, different animation styles came in. So you're not getting that kind of, you know, homogenous look throughout the whole series. Everything just piques your interest.
So my name's Andy Glynn. I'm the CEO of a production company called Mosaic Films, which is based in London. I kind of started off making animation completely by accident. My first career was a clinical psychologist, in which I was working in adult mental health across children and adults. And then I started becoming a documentary filmmaker. And I found I was making films about kind of similar themes. And then there was a lovely person at Channel 4 called Katie Spate, who we ended up chatting about doing something about mental health. And I think I said, what about animation as about a way of representing people's inner experiences? And she kind of said, oh, that's a great idea. And then the end of the conversation ended up with a commission for what used to be called the 3-Minute Wonder, which was these small slots on Channel 4. And I think it's called The Slot before it was called 3-Minute Wonder. But so I kind of remember leaving and going, oh crap, I need to make animation. I literally knew nothing at all, but felt that testimony about people's experience of mental health layered with animation could make something really, really powerful. And that began the journey of this concept called Animated Minds, which was originally a 4-part series, but now Animated Minds is encompassed, I think, around about 30 to 40 short form animated documentaries on a whole range of themes to do with mental health and psychology. So for us, the obvious reason of using animation wasn't what might seem obvious to other people. It wasn't about anonymity, actually. It was about being able to try and visualize subjective experience. So the big theme for us was that people who'd experienced, for example, mental illness often find it difficult to communicate what that experience is like. Is there a way, so they'll use metaphors and they'll try and use language to explain what it feels like. And we've talked about depression being the black dog. But what does that mean if someone can actually try and talk in metaphor and we can work with them to visually recreate that experience? Would it lead to something that's richer? So that was the primary reason for doing animation. Of course, the second reason is it gives anonymity to people, so they don't have to say who they are. You don't have to see them. And there was a third issue that kind of cropped up almost by accident, but then became the mainstay of why we made animated documentaries, which is this. If you're watching live action film about an individual who's experiencing mental health, then the experience often becomes about watching that individual. We become, as an audience, quite removed. So we're watching about, what John's doing or what Deborah's doing or experiencing. Something happens with animation which allows us to identify in a way that we wouldn't with live action, that suddenly that key character becomes us. And especially when that animation becomes more abstract, we can suddenly relate to it in a way I don't think we can with live action, that we really identify. When we made the first series, which was called Animated Minds, and that was about adult mental health, even though it went out on Channel 4, the biggest use of those films was, I guess, what we call service users, so people with mental health problems engaging with services, saying, oh my God, I took that to my key worker or my psychiatrist or my psychologist, and I said, this is what OCD is like. This is what it's like to have psychosis. Because that description, that visual description, was a richer way of conveying something than I ever could do. And that became a really powerful rationale for making more films of the same ilk. So, for example, we had a film called Ali's Story in Seeking Refuge, and he was from Afghanistan, and he'd left his entire family behind and was living with a relative in England and felt very, very homesick. He was probably one of the youngest kids I've ever interviewed. I think he was 10 years old at the time. And I guess what was important is to put him in control and put him in the driving seat and realize that this is his story. So what we did is we incorporated some of his pictures in the animation. We made sure that he was saying what he wanted to say and felt in control. And if he got upset, we didn't have to include that in the film. And it was more about, whether it's me doing the interviewing or anybody else, it's more about setting people completely at the ease, which is different to a lot of documentaries because they become masters of their own storytelling. For me, there's two issues in kind of making animation for young people. One is the obvious one, which is budgets. There isn't enough money. The tariffs that, for example, BBC give for animation is, it's almost like documentary budgets. It's between 1,500 and 2,000 a minute, and there's no economies of scale where you can, build up and do lots of content, and also you don't really own the IP. Although there's grey areas there, but as a finance model, it's a loss leader. It's really, really difficult to make things work. That is changing slowly. People are more open to kind of doing co-production, and short form content is valued outside the UK as well. So there's from a producing perspective, there's opportunities there. The problem we've got is that 95% of what we make in the animation space is what people would call worthy animation. So it's animation that focuses on social issues. And of course, BBC Education is a natural home for that kind of content. There aren't many other homes for content which looks at these kind of issues from a child's perspective. So that's hard. That's always a struggle. One of the things which might be a bit of a tragedy is that people fail to realise the impact that these kind of animations can have. So absolutely, as you say, a lot of it's placed on entertainment, and that's what animation is perceived as being. But when you look at some of the things that we've done and the impact they've had in kind of changing hearts and minds, it makes you realise how needed this genre can be and how effective it can be. We did a series called I Can't Go to School Today, which looked at secret childhood illnesses. So, for example, people who might be living with HIV at school and can't talk about it with anyone. And the power of playing that in a classroom and getting people to open up and see someone's narrative for us was massively impactful and rewarding. And you start seeing the power that animation can have to both inform, educate, and also change minds as well. So one of the series we did was called When I Worry About Things, and that came from some research we did in looking at childhood mental health, and realised that a lot of the focus in media circles had been about teenage mental health. So BBC Three were doing lots of stuff in the area of teenage depression, anxiety, and deliberate self-harm. But we knew that there were children from 8, 9, 10, 11 who were having marked and significant mental health problems at primary school. And we made a series which was all about these kids' experience of what it was like to have a mental health problem. And they were amazing kids who were articulate and very, very open and courageous and honest in what they talked about. But what that did was start having a dialogue about the fact that mental health is not just a teenage problem, and it's something that can affect kids of all ages, and getting schools as an example to really attend to what they can do, especially around kind of that 9-10 pre-transition and transition phase, which can have a massive impact on mental health. So that's a series I'm really proud of, because I think it had quite profound and measurable effect.
Hello, everybody. My name is Olga Cheripanova. I'm creator and creative producer of Brave Bunnies show and the brand, the global brand, which was started and creatively produced in Kiev, in Ukraine, in the Global Reproduction Creative House. The Brave Bunnies show this is the global brand, but the main idea based that Brave Bunny family travel the world, and they're brave enough to meet in every episode new friend and play the new game together. For today, our Brave Bunny project is known in more than 80 countries all around the world. And since launch of season 1, 52 episodes, 7 minutes, 1.5 years ago, Brave Bunnies have been in the top 10 shows in the Great Britain on Milkshake channel, in Italy, Ukraine, Israel, Australia, and in other countries. And in South Korea, the series was voted as viewers' favorite show, and we're so proud about that. If you would like to create the global brand, and the big idea, which should be popular from all over the world, first of all, you should think about the big mission. If it's no big idea inside, it'll be really how to make this brand global. So if we speak about the global mission and big ideas behind of the funny story and very simple story of brave bunnies traveling the world, this is the celebration and acceptance of the diversity of this world. Our kids face with a lot of challenges when they're really small and they're young. But when we speak about the diversity from the Brave Bunnies perspective, we first of all speak not only about nationality or territory differences, but we speak about the human being differences, because we are all a little bit different. And for example, I could be extrovert and you introvert. And we are from the other perspective, we have the same common issues because we're human beings. We feel the same feelings, but we have different reaction on that, and this is the the biggest problem, how to cope with all this diverse world, amazing, in the really creative way, and to have a great result. Like when I was really young, one really clever teacher shared with me that, Olga, your life will be as much successful as you can really communicate well with the people, it was just the main idea that firstly, you should communicate with the people. You should meet them and somehow communicate. And I was always full of interest of this sphere. And when, before my animation experience, I worked as a feature film producer, and I have to meet a lot of new people from all over the world and communicate with them. And after the first meeting, in a couple of weeks, to create something really great with them all together as a team. So this is what this is where my interest about communication coming from. But when I started to do the kids content 12 years ago, I realized that it's really great to go the special degree, and this is how I have a second degree in psychology. And all these 12 years, I really interest in this theme and communicate with teachers from all over the world about that, and especially look for the kids what we were learned when we were really small. So I try to use all these knowledges, creating the content, accept diversity. For the kids, it's nothing, they would like just to play and to have a funny time, to see the funny music and play with the bunnies, So, my task as a creative producer and creator, to find the language, not to be like a boring teacher who shared with them, you should appreciate the diversity, you should accept another kid. I should find a really funny way, and the role model which present what does it mean to accept the diversity and not to lose themselves. From the very beginning, I would like to share that Brave Bunny is traveling not our human world. They travel the Brave Bunny world. It's a great metaphor of our world, but we try to do all our best to present it from the global perspective. And it's no countries, nationalities, or continents in our Brave Bunny world. We create this special world where it's only climate zones like jungles, plains, forests, savanna, and the animals live there. And our Brave Bunny family can originally live in the Carrot Valley, where everything is so familiar for them. But one day they decide to see another possibility and to meet somebody they never thought existed. And actually, this is actually the great metaphor of what kids feeling when they're 5 years old. Because when they are 3, all their family, all the world looks like a family. We keep this background with the parents in our Brave Bunny show, and in every episode, Brave Bunny parents help us actually, because they are always in the beginning of episodes. We present the family, some family communication, and in the very end, they play really important role. They help kids to integrate the experience of the day, and this is really wise advice to all maybe parents which will occasionally look the show all together with kids, that it's really nice to communicate with the kids at the end of the day and somehow to understand what is going on, but not to put the labels, because actually kids understand what is good and what is bad only when somebody, some adult, share that's bad, this good, this girl good, and this boy not good because he doesn't want to play with you, for example. I feel that animation gives so many great opportunities for creativity and how to to present your idea for the kids from so amazing perspective, because if we speak about live action, it's impossible to create really brave bunnies, so you should make it's amazing format, but it will not give you a possibility to create something you never will see in the real world. So if you and animation give all this possibility to create this a little bit fantastic world, very interesting, exciting. If you speak about the global brands, this is the best idea to create animation, because for example, Brave Bunny is now in more than in more than 80 countries. It means that more than million kids can see this story, and it means that you can spread your ideas, your big missions through all over the world. I'm sure that you know everything about the news, and I'm sure that the whole world really now put attention to all the situation. And of course, I would like to share that Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine has essentially changed the many production process in Ukraine and had a global impact on many aspects of life in Ukraine globally. It's no good coin so far. Good sides of these coins, the wise really influence on everything. But if we speak about animation industry and business, exactly this part of the business could be remote in the more safe areas, and we all understand that during the lockdown that it's possible to work not from the same office, but to connect Zoom and to work on the distance. And if I speak about Brave Bunnies project, we were faced with the situation that even during lockdown, we cover everything in time with the season 1, and we're really going to continue season 2 with our multinational partners very soon. And also I have another really great example of Ukrainian project. This is a beautiful Ukrainian project, animated feature Mavka, the Forest Song, which is based on Ukrainian folklore, and they didn't stop production as well. It took an immigrant studio from Ukraine several days since the start of the invasion to reorganize the work, and actually I spoke with the producers, and they already announced that the project should be delivered according to the plan already in the end of this year. It'll be really great if audience from all over the world could see this movie, and real help could be acquisition of the rights for the release of animated feature in different countries, and maybe involving the well-known stars, talented to be the voices of the cast of the film, to spread this Ukrainian culture, the spirit, and the idea.
Hi, I'm Kath Shackleton. I'm producer at Petal Animation. Yeah, so we work with BBC Learning, and it was a project that we initiated with them. So we pitched the idea to them, and they funded us, and we worked with 6 World War II Holocaust survivors from a voluntary group called the Holocaust Survivors Friendship Association, based in Leeds. So there were 6 elderly Holocaust survivors who were talking to us about their experiences as children, escaping from Nazi-occupied Europe and coming to start new lives in the UK. So it was aimed at about 14-year-olds. The national curriculum at the time stated that they had to learn something about the Holocaust, but didn't really give any information about what was needed to be learned. So it was an introduction really to the Holocaust, and the 6 different people that we spoke to all had very different experiences and had witnessed different parts of what happened, but pieced together, they all helped to tell the story. I think animation is great because it can cover, well, it can jump around different periods of history. It can cover subjects such as imagination, loss, memory, all those things that in a non-naturalistic way. And also I think with the horror of the Holocaust, it can put some of that across, but in a way that isn't too graphic and difficult for children to understand. What we really like from it is the ability, I think pathos is one of the strongest things that animation has. And I describe pathos often as the ability to make you laugh and cry at the same time. And there's a couple of moments that I like. One of my favorites is from Ruth's animation. And she describes she's escaped through Europe with her mum, dressed. We're able to show all of this in the animation, but basically she was pretending that she'd gone on a day trip to see her aunt in Holland, wearing every item of clothing that she owned on a hot summer's day, pretending that she wasn't hot. A Nazi had tried to chat her mum up on the train, and they nearly had their cover blown several times. And they finally got on the boat to come to England, and they didn't have all the right permits and everything else. But her mother, like her, is a very charming, persuasive, powerful woman. So she got away with it. And she's saying to her mum, Mum, when are we going to be in England? When are we going to be in England? She says, I know, you'll know that you're going to be in England because it will be raining. And then Ruth says, I've never been so pleased to see rain in all of my life. And Zane has drawn her with her nose pushed against the train window and the rain coming down. Then the next shot, we've got a little girl on a map of the UK with an umbrella jumping from one puddle to the other. And then the next moment, she gets her foot off the train. And it's the moment that war has been declared, and there's Neville Chamberlain coming over the train platform, the loudspeaker in the station, and everyone stands still. So there's just a real lovely moment of light and darkness. And again, I think children are very good at light, even in the dark, because they can only understand things in the now. So they have a way of putting that across. And it took a long time for people to kind of get what we were trying to do. People who really liked animation were like, you've made animation about something so horrible, how could you? And those who were really interested in the Holocaust said, you've made a cartoon about us, you're mocking us. And gradually, both parties got to see the piece, all the pieces, and realised what a powerful medium it was. At this time, this kind of work is becoming increasingly important. I think it's vital that we capture different people's voices, and certainly coming out of COVID, people are more isolated than ever before. Young people need to really have opportunities to develop their social and emotional literacy. So I think these projects become more and more important. I think there's a real need for authentic voices to go on screen. And for their experiences, for ordinary people to see and hear themselves on screen, and for the power of creativity and imagination and possibility that can come from all of this. So I think there should be more of this work. There should be more commissions for it. There should be more time given and space given for young people to explore what matters to them, really, and for their visions to be put on screen. I also think that there's going to be a huge job ahead with all these displaced children and young people from around the world, the refugees who've had their education completely disrupted, who are going to have to rebuild new lives. And again, I fear that misinformation and people with malicious intent can corrupt young minds. And again, we need to make sure that we have a prevalence of accurate and emotionally literate messages that are going out there that are available to those young people, and that can help to make a balanced media diet going forward for them.